Beauty.
2:30 a.m.
Yeah. How you all going?
I'm doing well, thanks, Andrew. Yeah, you probably need that coffee.
I do. All right, it's all right.
Well, looks like we got a few folks here, so we can get started. I didn't really put anything up for discussion. I think, Richard, you had mentioned one thing that should be thrown on there on the Telegram group. It kind of went by. I was trying to find it back, what it was you wanted to talk about. I think it was something that Brian had said too, and thought, well, maybe we can put it out there. So
I have really no clue what it was.
You don't remember either? Okay. So Brian, shall I just hand it over to you a moment, and then we'll see what we end up talking about?
Sure. I was just turning off that Telegram virus. The French group is extremely active. Getting close to getting version 4 done. A few of you out there have it. Don't feel bad if you don't. But I think it's working pretty good. I just finished the UDP module for Autosteer this morning. And it's just lots of little loose ends, and it all seems to be working quite well. I don't know. Have you tried it, Andreas?
I have.
Anybody? Yeah. Andrew, what do you think?
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be a big improvement. There's some. I really like the Arduino stuff you've done on there. You know, like for the the setups and that. So yeah, because there's a few little bugs that just need to be finished off. But yeah, I think it's going to be a great improvement.
Good. How little? Andreas?
Yes, I have tried with my board, and everything was working very fine. Only the MMA needs to reset, but that's okay.
I actually figured that out last night. You can do a program counter set to 0 reset. So every time we upload Arduino settings, it'll automatically reset the Arduino, and then it works anyway.
Okay.
That's taken care of too. Hey, Richard, did you try it?
Yeah, I'm currently in my on the computer. I opened the thing, and yeah, it looks tremendous. It's wonderful, and the things I've tested out are working fine. So very good, very nice. And I already found the one that I was talking about. I want to talk about, and that was the.
We can hardly hear you. We can hardly hear you, Richard.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it? I don't know if this microphone is working. I was dead.
Nope.
No. Let me fix that first.
I'll mute you while you're playing around with that for a minute.
Have you tried it, Wilbert?
Yeah, I just started into it. I was messaging back and forth with you. I think the only thing I found was in sections. When you set the sections up, that could have just been when I built the program from Visual Studio, that it might have screwed up the source code, but I couldn't change the amount of sections that I couldn't go over 3 sections. It was just default to 3, and then I couldn't go over that. Did you have that too, Andrew?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
When you first started it up, or when you compiled, did you delete everything?
I did, and then so I was going to delete everything again just to make sure it wasn't the build that I did from Visual Studio. So I wanted to say that before I said it was a bug. So now I've said it's a bug, but it's not. So maybe, or unless Andrew says it is. I don't know. You had the same thing, right, Andrew?
Yeah, ours is stuck on 3, but yeah, we haven't deleted everything beforehand, so we might have to go back and do that.
Fail. Yeah, it's so very different. Everything is so different with the new version that it's all got to be deleted. Like all the old, it's so sensitive to the settings because it creates all these XML files, and that's where it keeps its settings from. And if it finds the same name, it'll just use it. And now there's 4 of those, whereas before there were only like a vehicle file. So, I mean, it should save just about everything now. Well, it will save everything now, including the Arduino settings and all of that. So it's so very, very different than even the previous version 4 that was initially released. And that's a problem too. If you guys have used another version 4, then it's close, but it's still way out. And even the fields, any field that you've opened with the latest version 4, you can't open them again in version 3. Sections file, because now there's color associated with each of those patches in the section file. Or maybe it does work. I can't remember if I made it backwards compatible or not. But once you go V4, there's no more
going back.
Which is understandable because, well, why would you? You know, if you're using version 4.
I tried the version 2, and I found out the thing with the section is related to the open field. If you have a field open, you can change the amount of sections. I think it you intend to be it like this. When I used it, the former versions, I sometimes changed the amount of sections while driving to reset the width of the sections. When doing the outer kind of boundary of a field, I enlarged the outer sections by 2 meters to avoid the sprayer starting when turning on the headlamp, as I normally don't use boundaries as they are too small for Germany. And to reset it again, I added a section and deleted it, so they all jumped back to 3 meters. So for my usage, it would be better to be able to change the amount of sections when a field is open, but doesn't harm really.
Can I be so bold to say that's not going to happen? Because what's changed is the headland. Using the headland and calculating when the machine is outside of the headland, and there's so much more going on now that changing the number of sections on the fly, the possibility of stuff getting lost and not getting updated, because you have to basically update the entire thing when you open a field. And opening a field is when you do that major restart. I thought it would just be safer, or there's a lot less problems, that the only way you can configure a machine is with the field closed.
There are other possibilities to do the way I did, so it doesn't matter really.
You can still change the width of a section.
Yeah, so I can when driving the headland, I can enlarge the outer sections by 2 meters, and when I go back in the field, I reduce them back to 3 meters, and that's all. Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
Another question I have with the actual version. I'm not quite sure, but I think you have changed them the order of bytes sending to the steer controller. I'm not quite sure, but if you do, why is this necessary? You dropped out the section byte.
Yep.
I agree, we don't need it, but we can leave the place of the steer bytes at the same place, so we won't have lose the compatibility for the other Arduinos out there. The data is the same, but only the order have changed. But if we would keep the order, it won't be necessary to change all the Arduino code of the existing systems.
If you're going to use version 4, you have to update their code.
Why?
Because it shouldn't work. If you're going to make the switch to version 4, make sure it doesn't work.
I don't agree, because the Arduinos running on version 3, they are configured with the MMA and they're doing what they should. The MMA is configured, the BNO, if it's connected, is all working. And the data they send back to OpenGPS is still the same in version 4. So I don't see the need to change them, because they don't need the configuration features as they are still configured. And they would work.
I can put it back the old way. Do we know for sure that version 4 works with the old Arduino?
I think they will. If you would keep.
Do we know for sure?
Sorry?
Do we know for sure that the old software works with, or the old Arduino setup works with version 4? I haven't tried it.
I would be pretty sure, because the data hasn't changed. So I had a problem. I don't use Arduino. I have ESP32. I have to change the code to keep it working, but the code is still the same. Only the order of the bytes have changed. That's all. And I with the ESP I can't use the configuration features. So I don't see the need of changing the order of the bytes. So if there is no real need, we can just keep it and have backwards compatibility.
But the new version doesn't allow any Arduino A to D conversion.
Okay, I agree, yeah.
And that's,
but it won't harm anyone if we would leave the space of the 1 byte blank that formerly had contained the section control byte.
And then just move it over back to where it was.
Yeah.
That I can do for sure. Yeah. Yeah, I can put that back. Yeah, there's no reason to move them around, and then I'll just change the code so that it skips that first one, and for now, because it'll just be blank.
Yeah.
Okay, yep, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, and then like you say, it doesn't mess up the ESP32 stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let me write that down.
Is there anybody else that has some feedback, I guess, on other things you noticed with version 4 for those of you who have tried it out that you wanted to bring up?
I've found some minor bugs. Some are related with the dual heading system, but I have not really figured that out to the end. So if I'm done with it, I'm gonna write it to Brian, and we can solve these problems. I have still the problem with the NTRIP client setting. When the Windows keyboard disappears and the keypad appears, yeah, we have to talk about this again, and yeah, let's see. We're gonna fix these problems. But the main thing, I think, are working very good, and I really like the graphical interface. It's a really cool improvement.
I agree. Yeah, I also really liked hopping back into Google Earth, seeing different colored sections, and oh, it was awesome. Really neat.
We're getting there. You can sure see the same questions over and over again on the forum. Where's the parts list? Where's the documentation? How do I do this? We're kind of at the point where we need that stuff. And how do we get there?
Can you hear me all right?
We can hear you're very muffled though.
I'll be back.
All right. I think now that once version 4 rolls out, I think we can really dig into that, because it sort of changes a little bit what the parts list is. Well, not necessarily what the part list is, but what for documentation wise, you know, what all the buttons are and what they all do. So now that we've got like the alpha version of that, I think we can really go to town on that now and get something that's really polished looking. I noticed in the Dutch forum on the Telegram group, Carl Dew had posted a really nice PDF of, it's essentially a whole wiki document that he put up. It's all in Dutch though, but he did a really nice job. It's probably about 32 pages or so. And he kind of walked all the way through it. And that's ideally what I'd like to see. So we're kind of going to translate that, big chunks of that through anyhow.
What do you think is better? Is it better in a PDF form or in video form?
I think the PDFs would be easier to change to new versions. So you can keep 2/3 of it and throw away the old stuff. If you do a video, it's all starting from you if you have to change something.
Yeah. Nice to have it in print.
I think it's also possible to use the discuss group for documentation. You can mark a post as wiki, and if it's a wiki, everybody can change it. So you can do a post and it's marked as wiki and everybody can change it. So you can make this post of a post, and if there are changes, everybody can change the posts.
Can you show us that, Andres?
Oh yes.
Share your screen, if that's okay with Wilbert.
Do you see my screen?
Yes, we do.
Can already someone hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you well now.
Ah, thank God.
Do you see the AGOPengps?
Yes, we do.
Yes.
Yes.
You just take a post and I need to log in. And I need to look where it is. Here it is. You use this one, and you have, at the moment it's a wiki, and you can remove it or a wiki or it's a normal file. So if we're going to another post, like this John Deere, and I press make wiki, it's a wiki. So everybody have this sign and everybody can change this post.
Can they change any post too?
Yeah.
Are you sure this function is available for everyone, or is it only for the admins?
I think if the admin marked the post as wiki, everybody can change it. So I do here one as test. Oh.
Need a few more.
So maybe someone can try to change it now.
I have to close down first my full screen program.
Well, if that works, that if anybody could do that, we have that wiki section started in the getting started category.
Yeah, I can edit it.
Yeah. Oh, good. So Richard can do that too. So that should work out. Yes.
But I can't. Hello, everyone. Sinisha from Croatia.
Hello.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not an admin, so I can't edit it. There isn't that wrench icon. I can't.
Are you a registered user?
Yes, I'm logged in and everything. Yeah.
I tried to change it and I can do it. I could do it because maybe it was locked as I tried to change it, and I'm not an admin.
Mm.
So maybe not many users are allowed it at the same time.
Perhaps it has something to do with the number of posts or something like that. I think I'm in something like a basic user or reader.
Okay. I think you must have some posts.
Some posts.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let me see.
One other thing I'd like to say too, Brian, I think once we have a little bit more documentation, it probably should be included in the installer. So there's just a document there, a little PDF that like a user's manual or owner's manual kind of thing, just to get people started. But the other issue that raises is languages. So I really like the way that you've done it with having a spreadsheet where we just, whatever language is spoken, they can just fill out the spreadsheet and put their own language in to translate it. We'll have to probably do a similar thing to make it work, but right now everything's in English, which is what we're speaking right now. But I realize that most people who are using this are not native English speakers.
Yes, and most farmers don't speak many languages, at least here in Croatia.
Sure.
So maybe those young farmers in their early 20s, but older ones, no.
So
I think it would be up to the nation to make their own documentation on Wiki. We can use the international Wiki, and if there is a need for documentation for other languages, the nation can do it by their own users.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you have any other requests there, Brian? Like what would you like to see for documentation? Just accurate documentation to start off with.
Or some. The project has certainly grown. Like it's really big. I get tweet messages from all over the world. People are using it, and and that's like how the Polish one started up. It's like, sure, we got Polish and then Spanish and that sort of thing. You can just, it's only going to accelerate. But I think with PC board, and it's a very advanced project. I mean, people who've never seen an Arduino before, like Kurt, I've been using Kurt as a good example because Kurt comes from a background where he probably didn't tinker with a bunch of different, Arduino projects and that sort of thing. And when I think about the first time I hooked up an Arduino, and if my first project was this Autosteer board, it would be just doomed to failure. And so you can make it step by step, but like I say, if you miss just using the old bootloader setting, well, all of a sudden your entire project won't work. And maybe we should encourage more and more people to buy Andreas's board. Like, I know some people want to build their board, but I think some people kind of feel that they have to build the board. And it costs any more to buy Andreas's board.
I bought two.
Well, there you go. And it's, it's so modular. You can replace the IMU and bolt on the motor driver. If you have problems, they're quite repairable. Anything that on the board, other than maybe the power supplies, it should be quite a durable, a very durable base board. So maybe we shouldn't even have the PCB option. Just if you want to run Autosteer, I mean, we still have it, but keep it pretty quiet. And if you want to run Autosteer, just buy Andreas.
Yeah.
I would think the vast majority of people, even though it's against the disclaimer, would be in favor of doing the Autosteer. I think that would be the biggest reason for using AgOpenGPS. In my opinion, I don't know if that's true, but I think there should be documentation for how to at least use a PCB as far as setting it up. That's my take.
Where do we encourage to build your own board completely? Like get the PC board made in China and then buy all the individual pieces and then solder them and hope that out of the 200 solder joints, there isn't one that's cold. Like is the project complicated? Is it too complicated for the majority of beginner electronics people, or non-electronics people, I should say? I've soldered my entire life. I've built boards. I've built thousands of different projects. I used to work on $1 million medical equipment and life support equipment, and I know how to solder. I know how to hook up a wire and strip, and I've seen 1,000 different problems and errors and that sort of thing. And you can almost, just by smelling a board, I can tell you where the problem is. But so few people have that. Should the emphasis be on, unless you really, really, really want to learn how to make a PC board, just buy Andreas's?
I think that's pretty fair for the majority of people out there. I would say that it should be available as an open source project, that the files are available for other people.
Yeah.
But definitely it should be encouraged to buy. Otherwise you just get the continual questions that are the same coming round and round.
Because you can order the board from Andreas with an Arduino already on it.
Mm.
And even just hooking it up, there's 100 ways to screw up.
Andreas, does your board, are you allowed to sell it with all the components on it, or just an Arduino? How does that work?
I sell the board different, and everybody can buy the sensor set from my shop. So, but I don't sell it as a set, because if I sell it as a set, it's a working machine, and that's causes problems with the law. So I have the board in the shop, and I have the parts in the shop. So, but you have to order two things: the sensor set and the board, and then you're finished. But I can sell it as one whole thing.
Okay. So I guess that kind of hopefully gives us an idea of where to go with that. I mean, I don't know how to word that, I guess, on a wiki page, but buy the board, unless you're really, really keen and want to solder it yourself. But
well, how would that work in Croatia? Could you order it from Austria in Asia?
Actually, I went to Andreas directly. Austria is not that far, an hour and a half. And I wanted to meet Andreas in person and make a field trip out of it.
Perfect.
Yeah. But yeah, that's about it.
Croatia is in the European Union, so it's no problem.
Yeah.
It's also no problem to sell it in Europe, but sometimes difficult with the customs. So, yes, I need to sell it with Austrian VAT, and user have to pay also VAT if they import it. That's the problem. Because if I sell it without VAT to countries outside the European Union, I need not lots of papers and I don't like that. That's too difficult.
Yes.
So we need an American shop, a Commonwealth shop, and European Union, and then everywhere else, I guess, is the way we do that. But I think when you get a DigiKey order in Canada, you have to check a box that says you're not going to sell these components outside Canada. So I don't know what that looks like for everybody else, but that's what it is for us here in Canada.
I wonder if ArduSimple would be interested in supplying boards. I mean, they obviously can ship ArduSimple boards all over the world.
Yes.
In 3 days.
Yes.
Yes, but they want to do, don't like to do support for such things, so they are overworked with this. They have they say I'm in contact with them very often, and they are saying the software for the new board costs them much of money because they are not programmer, and they need to buy this thing. Also, they need to buy the codings. And they don't like to do software support.
Mm. Back to building your own PC board then for many people. But I guess if we have a good list and we have a good assembly video and we have a relatively simple board, it is doable.
Yes, I think maybe it's possible to do a board in Canada or in America, and a small company can build it and sell it. If they are fast in soldering, it's no problem.
I wonder what the liabilities are for selling an Autosteer board.
Keep it separate, as Andreas does. Keep the parts, keep a sensor package and a PCB package, and that's all. You're done. So you don't sell a machine. It's an easy.
It's a motor control board. It's not an Autosteer board.
Yeah.
Yes.
A motor speed controller, a position controller. Because really, that's all it is,
For
right?
lawnmowers.
A lawnmower sensor.
Yeah.
Again, it all comes back to that documentation thing.
I have another question concerning software. It's about the yaw rate. It was asked in the discussion in the forum, and it's about the answer. Brian was the Arduino won't steer very fast if the speed is high enough. Is that kind of correct?
If the angular velocity is too high.
Yeah. Because I thought about reducing the steering speed in relation to the speed driving in the Arduino code, because the Arduino knows the ground speed, and so he can reduce maybe the maximum pulse width modulation signal when you drive too fast.
You would also need the wheelbase in order to calculate angular velocity.
Yeah, but if I'm driving at 10, I can't steer at 100% motor speed.
I used to have an angular. It's already all calculated in AgOpenGPS. You know what the speed is. So maybe we can use that blank spot that used to have section control and send what the actual angular velocity is, and then compare that with your speed. And then based on, you know, kind of the inverse of speed. If you're going from 0 to 20 kilometers an hour, at 0, of course, you don't reduce it at all. And then at 20 kilometers an hour, you reduce it by 60, 70%.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, it would be a safety stuff
built right into the Arduino.
I think you need a speed that's able to be input where we input the minimum turn radius. So when you've got a minimum turn radius, the maximum speed that you want to turn that at, then you can calculate your velocity a lot easier. No, because it would, as your speed goes up, rather than it being a set, I think it's set in vehicle files, but it's not a number that can be changed anywhere.
It's
understand.
I think it's currently in radians per second, right? Is that how it's set right now, Brian?
As part of the steer settings?
Yeah, as far as there was, what's it called? Max safe turn, I think is how it was listed
right
before.
here.
It's a slider
okay.
you can set, yeah.
Max Stanley. I don't think it's there anymore. I took it out. I just set to 7, which is almost like Formula 1 kind of G-force, where it slows it down. Because it was one more setting. Well, what I was finding, it was one more setting. People said, well, it won't steer fast enough. Well, then they had turned down the maximum amount of angular velocity to very, very slow. See, it's really nice to calculate it in AgOpenGPS because then automatically changes your set angle. Yeah, it's not in there at all anymore to set Autosteer settings. It hasn't been for a long time.
Just remembering back to the old days, I guess.
Yeah,
but
one more setting.
Yeah, you can't.
Or you can leave it out and calculate it in the Arduino as a safety function and based on speed, and that's all. Because I don't think wheelbase is the only thing you need to know. If you have a small, a narrow, wide tractor for the vineyards, you won't drive that fast in a curve. So I think speed will be most of the calculations.
Speed and the steering angle.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you could just say it's 3 meters long and then just use the 3 meters as a default wheelbase. Yeah.
Yeah. That could work, I guess.
Yeah. One other thing about the Arduino and the interrupts, that is something you don't understand. As soon as you add the UDP or the Ethernet module, it comes up the interrupts. You can't use the interrupt on pin 2 or pin 3. It starts out and then immediately pulls and it stays that way. And it keeps interrupting. So the encoder, like the steering wheel encoder switch, it just immediately counts down and the Autosteer shuts off. And I cannot figure out how to, well, it's got to be somewhere in Ethernet code. You know, one of the ways it's using a timer or whatever, but it's constantly triggering the hardware interrupts on the Nano.
I had the same problem at ESP Code, and I didn't cope with it. I commanded this function out, but I can't solve the problem.
I just did, like, you know, it goes through every 100 milliseconds, it does the normal loop. Outside of the loop, it checks for new Ethernet information. So I'm just on Ethernet, I'm just going to use the remote pin and then just check the remote pin, like just pull it. I mean, the Arduino is hardly used at all. I mean, the thing has got so much more capability, so it's got nothing but time. So it's just going to check that the remote is on pin 8, and then just check if that is low when it changes. And it works just fine. I have it running. I don't know if you can hear it clicking in the background. It is working just fine using a polling method. So we can use interrupts with USB, but we can use a polling method with UDP. I don't know, maybe no one else has ever used UDP and interrupts.
Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. I think it was me.
Yeah, good sound.
The stuff you find out when you actually have to write the code.
Does anyone use Ethernet, cabled Ethernet for connecting the pieces? You do?
Yep.
Because I'm thinking about using it for the roof unit. I've bought the new Ethernet shield of the real Arduino Ethernet shield, new version. It's using the 5500 chip, and it brings along the possibility to connect. There are heaters here and here, a row of heaters, and there you can put a power over Ethernet board on the Ethernet shield. So it would be able you would be able to use only one cable with power over Ethernet to power the head unit, the roof unit, and other modules. I haven't tried still, but maybe would be a good solution.
I would also say power over Ethernet is a nice solution. It had one disadvantage. The power over Ethernet switches usually uses 48 to 50 volts as an input. So you need somewhere a power source or a step-up converter to supply the device. So I don't know if this is worth the problems. But power over Ethernet, basically, I really like it, and I once even thought if I want to integrate it into my PCB with the ESP32, because yeah, there are some ready-made designs, but then for me, I decided against it because I have motor controllers on the PCB, and so I need 12 volt anyway. But yeah, going power over Ethernet is a nice idea, and I don't know the Arduino PCB, but also for ESP32, they have ready-made boards that can be supplied over power over Ethernet. So and also have wired Ethernet, of course. So I would say this is a nice addition in the future. If you solve the problem with where I get 48 or 50 volts for my power over Ethernet switch.
Yeah, we got that issue.
I have a set of, they're just connectors, and they're kind of like the hardware version of power over Ethernet, where you plug the Ethernet cable in, and then it's got the little jack coming off, and then you also did that at the other end. Ethernet in, it's got a jack coming off the other end, and you can put anything you want. It just uses the unused pair Ethernet cable.
Yeah, that's the version with for slower up to 100 Mbit and not standard power over Ethernet, but that can be used too. It's a bit of a hack, but I think in most cases it will work very fine.
You are kind of limited to the amount of power you can take.
Yeah, you do, and but if you use the Ethernet cable for all the powering, and you use that injectors as you speak now, they're called PoE injectors. Then you can also send out 24 volts or 12 volts at 3 or more amps. But I don't know if the cable is too thin to do it.
Yeah.
I would say 3 amps or more is too much, because the standard says, okay, that's defined for longer cables also. With the 48 volts input, I think it's 15 watts. So about 0.3 amps, I would say realistically on shorter distances, we won't use 100 meters cables on a machine. That might be, well, a half amp or maybe even 1 amp, but what I said, more will be really unrealistic over normal Ethernet wires, because they are really, really thin.
Okay. This is maybe a selfish question here, but I'm just going to kind of throw this out left field here. If those of you who are using Cat6 cables or Cat5 cables for sensor wire to your wheel angle sensor, how are you setting it up with a twisted pair you have for proper shielding? Does anybody know how that's done?
Yeah, you select 1 pair of wires that are twisted.
Say that again.
If you want to use the twisted pair, if you open a Cat5 cables, you usually see 4 pairs of twisted. And if you want to transfer a signal, just choose 1 pair, because the way they are twisted, every noise gets more or less affected on both ends. And if you read a differential at the end, well, the error more or less evens out.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, well, I just wanted to know how to do that if we're putting it in the wiki. Thank you. Brian, you had a little dongle there you wanted to show us?
Yeah. Did I mute? No.
Nope.
You got the Ethernet input there, and then you have Ethernet output, and then a power jack. So it just, Ethernet comes in, and Ethernet heads off, and then it just adds power to the cable only, and not to the connector itself. And then you got the other end, you just use this as your power source. It's just a barrel plug.
Yeah, that works good. Very nice solution.
It just uses the 2 unused wires, the orangies. So kind of slick.
Yeah, pretty cool.
All right, looks like we have about 10 minutes left here for an hour meeting. I don't know if anybody else wants to bring anything else up, kind of potluck, or throw out any questions. We'll do that in a minute.
Well, I got.
I was gonna say, whose house is the potluck?
Well, I speak to Brian a few weeks ago. I don't know anymore. I searched it back, and thing that I was trying to discuss is about also for new, especially for new users, but also for me, maybe more, to have a sort of wizard when you're opening OpenGBS. Just like now we have to create a boundary. You click which side you want from the fields, how many meters, press go, and then you can go. And it should be good to have a wizard like that with choose a field, choose a vehicle, choose an implement, and go. I think it should be good to have that sort of function in when you open the complete program. And there's a lot of ways to do it. So I think we talked, and it should be good to discuss about it, or not, just to throw the idea in in the trash can. That could also be done. But yeah, that was an idea of mine. But I'm full of ideas.
I think this would be a good idea. If the user won't use them, he maybe can check it out. Like when you usually start a new program, the info texts come up, and by clicking, I don't want to see them anymore. They are gone, and this would be a possibility to handle this.
Yeah, like that. If you set it all up and everything works fine, and you don't have to fine tune anything, just do your job. Then it should be nice to have just click a field, click a vehicle, implement, and press go, and then you are ready to go. And press. So I don't know if it's something like that, but for sure there should be also a function that you can close that wizard and it never comes back for people who don't want it.
Trouble with the new user is they don't have any vehicles. They don't have any implements or any tools or anything.
No, that's true.
Nothing to pick.
Yeah, you don't have anything. You don't. You don't have anything to pick. That's true.
There's no fields. There's no nothing. But at least what it could do is come up, you know, like Matthias says, you know, the first thing you do is, you know, open a field or just you know, like the typical help screens that come up when you first open an application. You know,
yeah.
Most programs do that, and some helps and some tips, and every time it comes. But man, it's a lot of work. But you know, they always have teams, a team of to just make those tips alone. And so, yeah, I'll think about it.
That would be something that we could easily help with, though, right? Like you're looking at a team here, right? If we had it set up in such a way that, you know, we want just even to write out tooltips. So if we had a spreadsheet where we just went, you know, tooltip A, vehicle width or antenna settings, like things like that we could just fill them in, that you'd have them. But I don't know if that is more work or less.
Like tooltips don't work in the touch screen, right?
Right.
That's a real pain in the neck. I know some, if you push a question mark, like a question mark, and then you can push a key, I mean, that's a lot more if statements, but help, you push the question mark, and then you push the key, and up pops a little thing of what it does.
Yeah, that should be good, but it should not be too 25 lines of text. Just tells it's a work switch, it does this, and it's the steer switch, it does this, like that. That's what you mean, I guess.
Yeah, you can open and close a field with it, or you know, the menus and stuff are kind of self-explanatory. I don't know, maybe I don't know. But once you use it 3 times, you're never going to use it again.
No, that's
and
true.
That's what a good wiki is for, right? So then you do all this programming, and change, then you have to go change it all again, and it just becomes more and more and more to try to keep, you know, in line. So that becomes more of a hassle than good.
Yeah, that's true. The wiki should also be a sort of manual for the complete program.
I think the thing to do is, you know, get some of your friends to try it, and people that have never seen it before, sit down and go, use it. You know, it is kind of tough, you know, to initially hook up a GPS. I don't know if you guys noticed, if you disconnect the GPS now, a different screen comes up. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that? Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good, isn't it? And then it tells you what's connected, what's not connected, what the NMA statement is. it gives you some troubleshooting information, that sort of. It's just another screen that comes up that says, "Do you want to see it?"
Yeah, for sure.
Sure.
I haven't tested with a real GPS, not yet though. Let me see.
The other thing I noticed too was in the simulator, I pushed the backwards button, and lo and behold, that little tractor started going backwards, and that was really cool. So,
Hey, open GPS start.
so while Brian's pulling that up, I think we need to set a deadline for documentation. I think we work good under deadlines, at least I do. What do you guys think? What should be our goal for a deadline? Yesterday?
Yeah. Well, I already started a few pages on the wiki on the GitHub. Oh, that's really cool.
And it even spins.
Yeah. Nice one.
You know what's working. You know what's doing something in the background.
Yeah. Pretty cool. Nice.
It'll restart. Then it can restart it again. Sharing is stopped. Great.
Short question.
Share a computer versus sharing an application.
Does it also detect when you're using UDP a timeout or something?
Anytime it loses NMEA. That's why it says UDP. Oh, you can't see it now.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how we lost NMEA is defined for. More than 500 milliseconds, no signal or whatever.
1.05 seconds, just in case you use 1 hertz GPS receiver. So here it tells you, there's no NMEA, there's nothing coming in. GPS isn't connected, the Autosteer isn't connected, the machine pool is not connected, and the UDP is off.
It would be good to be check this other information too if NMEA comes in. So it would be give the possibility to check if the other ports are connected, because in the newer version the button with the antenna strength signal is missing. I can't check the incoming signal anymore. Or opening the steer settings, there it is.
You have to read. It's in the wiki. If you click on the kilometers an hour, all that comes up. There is no signal strength button anymore because now there is this extra screen. So if you click on the kilometers per second, then it shows you. You click on it again.
It's really needed.
So it's all there. It's just in tricky places. And then here's like module info. There's like all the PGMs and everything. So it's all there.
Pretty cool.
Tough girls like this.
Perfect. It's always the stupid user, always.
So yeah, I changed some of that and haven't said anything. I was just wondering if anyone would find it. But now you all know, so that takes the fun out of it.
No, it's not. It's still funny,
So yeah, if you just click on the kilometers, there it is. I thought, man, I don't need another button. And then, yeah, this is still down here. See, all that still works. This doesn't update. So none of this is changing here in the Batman menu. And yeah, and then over here, this is delete applied is over here now. And then this is kind of like the Arduino configuration. It's all just kind of there. Oh, dual heading. I'll talk with you about that later, Matthias, about how we select dual heading from the F9P. There's so many combinations on dual antenna and HDG, like HDG and PAOGI, and then you can set heading from BNO55 and from your Autosteer board and from not from your Autosteer board. And oh.
Yeah. If I'm done with the code and if I have tested and find the last bugs on the AGOPengps parser and manage it with my ESP32 code, then we gonna mail and mark the settings in the settings box, which would be good for a dual heading. Another question on the microcontroller code on the Arduino or the ESP code. I think we should provide a full set of this, like having a Autosteer code and then a folder Autosteer code and then a folder ESP32 Autosteer code and a folder Arduino Autosteer code. The same as machine control or section control code. So always bring along both codes or all working existing codes, because often in the forum there are questions about doing this or that, and the code already exists, but no one can find it anymore.
Yeah.
That should be good. I got a small
We're gonna
question
have
too.
we're gonna have a USB Autosteer code and an Ethernet Autosteer code, a USB machine code, and a Ethernet machine code. So it can be 4.
The ESP code I actually wrote. I tried to provide both an Wi-Fi code and an USB code, all in one. You can select it at the web interface, and if you use USB, you can the ESP creates an access point, so you can still access the web interface when using USB connection to the computer.
Should we just make the decision to use the remote pin as the encoder input and not use the interrupt?
I guess
only one configuration.
That would be, what did you have intended for the hydraulic implement lift? Which, would that be the implement jack, or that we have on the PCB board currently?
The implement jack. That's part of the machine control bag. That has nothing to do with the Autosteer board. That one's completely separate. Implement isn't on the Autosteer board. Unless you want to build it that way, I guess.
Yeah, for me, if you want to use the tractor's hydraulic lift, I need a machine control board also in my tractor. Yeah, I understand. No, that's no problem. Simple, just another Arduino.
Does your ESP board, is it planned for yours, Matthias, to include the hydraulics on that and the relays and everything?
No, I think that's what I want to ask. Maybe we should have 3 things. We should have a Autosteer board, second a machine control board for the hydraulic liftings and maybe the U-turn stuff and things like that. And third thing, we should have a section control board, which is not the same as the machine control board. As we should maybe for the section control board, we can later on add the rate control and application maps and things like that using this way of communication. So I think 3 ways would be a good thing: Autosteer, machine control, and hydraulic lift, and section control, and later on maybe rate control. And section control also need a way back to compatibility for documentation.
That's a lot of USB cables.
I think those guys who are going to use machine control for hydraulic lift and additionally section control will use Wi-Fi or other things. I don't know if they're going to use USB. Another thing is the section control belongs to the sprayer or to the spreader or to the implement and not to the tractor, whereas the Autosteer and the machine control belongs to the tractor. So that's why I think we need a third way. As you want to separate the Autosteer and the machine control, there is a need for another way. You can leave in the implement.
Yep.
Yeah, I would also say at least I would put machine control outside of the basic Autosteer board, because that's advanced stuff. In my ESP software version, I have at least read the U-turn relay bits and allow the user to use them on outputs if they want to, because I have currently 3 unused outputs that can be defined for whatever a person wants. But I would also say something like hydraulic lifts or U-turn relays. It can be combined in one PCB or one sketch, but for the basic setup, I would say it's too much.
Brian, we have a lot of data. We have the steering and then the U-turn and the machine control. Is it possible to send all the data to the Arduino, to one Arduino?
To which Arduino?
To one.
Everything to one?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, you can send the machine control stuff to the Autosteer board.
Yes. Okay, that's good. Because I think there are a lot of users with a lot of IDs. So if someone just won't use the Autosteer and, for example, the tree planter, he maybe only need one relay. And on the Autosteer board, we have 5 or 4 ports free. So he just need to connect one relay to the Autosteer board and he's finished. And he don't need to need a second Arduino, a second USB cover, and then. So if all the data is going to Arduino, the user can take this and can take this. So it's only a thing of coding in the Arduino sketch.
Should we use software serial out of the Autosteer board? Then you can connect, you can daisy chain as many modules as you want together.
I think the software serial, I think it's good. We have 4 or 3 relays free on the Autosteer board, and you can do much things with it. You can do hydraulic, you can do tree planter, and one machine controller.
Ryan, you know my answer for complex setups. Has 3 letters. It starts with U.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm maybe agree.
But I think it's not good to have 3 or 4 or 5 different boards. So
I know.
Have the Autosteer board and have a second board for all the machine controller where you can add this or this one. So I think better have 2 PCBs instead of 3 or 4.
This is what I told Daniel this morning, and this is why there's 800 different versions of Linux desktop. Linux. I agree, Andres. I think a lot of people, like when they see version 4, I think a lot of people are going to have fairly simple section control, like turn the seeder off and on, and hydraulic, and Autosteer.
Yes.
Yep.
That on a board. And if you could have an Autosteer board with 8 configurable relays or 4 configurable relays, that's a pretty handy board.
Yeah, and those who wanna use more complex functions, they can add another board. But we can provide a board with basic functions, as you said. And if someone wants more, it would be better to change to UDP protocol, and he can get every information he wants to get at every place. So he can separate the controllers if he wants to, or combine them as he wants to.
Yeah. Well, we can pound it out on Telegram. We can think about it and try to figure out what's best on Telegram. It's a complicated topic. What's the best? One system fits all, doesn't fit anybody. So it's a tough question.
It
Yeah,
is.
but I think that the best thing would be to keep these three things separate and to keep the section control separate, as in my opinion it belongs to the implement, and it is no real relation to the Autosteer and to the machine control of the tractor.
Unless you're doing section control off the Autosteer board like Andreas is.
He just heard his name. All right.
Otherwise, he can throw away 50 PCBs fresh from the factory. If we completely remove the section control from the Autosteer board, I understand him.
Well, I would say for ease of use, for the generic approach, I would also say let's divide it in 3 different PCBs for the logic, at least in the wiki. Of course, it doesn't say that we can't do it any other ways, because, well, of course, some crazy people get crazy ideas and start building own PCBs that have more features, but that's not the, I would say, for the way to go. Let's keep it simple, stupid, and if someone only wants Autosteer, he should be able to get Autosteer. And if someone only wants section control for whatever reason, because he believes he's steering better or doesn't like any steering motors or whatever, and like stick, so he can just get section control. So I would say for the basic setup, it would be easier to put it one step after the other, even if it gets maybe a bit more ugly if someone wants all features combined. But it gets easier, I think, for the beginner if he can focus on the topic he wants to do and not have to start with 5 other topics at the same time.
Okay, I'm gonna just we're gonna wrap it up here. I'm sure we could talk all night long, but I think we'll leave some of this discussion for the next time. I'm thinking probably in about 2 weeks' time. Again, we'll try another meeting based on who can make it, that kind of thing. But we'll figure on meeting again about 2 weeks. And this time seemed to work pretty good from what I got back on the forum. It seems like the bulk of you are in UTC +1 kind of time zone. So we'll stick to right around this time for now, and we'll say bye. And yeah, any other discussion, we'll check it up on the forum. You can look for the video, probably posted tonight, something like that. All right.
Thank you, Wilbert.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.